Let's call it what it is. You're a man worshiper. You're worried about other men's opinions. You're worried about how you're perceived by them. You're rehearsing for them before you even speak to them. You walk up into groups of men and you're thinking about how do they see me? What if my bitch isn't fine enough? What if I don't got the billete to be here? What if I don't got the muscles? How do I hold up against them? They're much more dominant than me. They're taller than me. They're much more handsome than me. You're a man worshiper. That's what scripture calls a respecter of persons, right? You look at another man's status, you look at another man, and he may have more authority than you, maybe even in the workplace, right? And instead of allowing his title to just be that, his title, you allow it to be something greater. Instead of allowing his status to just be that, his status, you allow it to be something greater. And you give power over to him, you give weight over to him. His opinion suddenly begins to change your mind. His opinion suddenly begins to shape the way you view life, even if you don't agree with him. You become more agreeable around men like that, men that you see as more authoritative, men that you see higher than you. Your voice even shakes. You may even become submissive. That's pretty wild if you ask me. That's pretty wild. This is how the modern day man is. Worshippers of other men, worshippers of women, worshipper of society, allowing other men to dictate the life that they live, dictate their fears. You see, a lot of men will project their fears onto the internet, and you take it and you run with it. This is what the red pill community does a lot. Let's talk about them broken-hearted simps. All right, a lot of them are broken-hearted. They couldn't lead a fly to a fucking wall. They couldn't lead a horse to water. And then they go online and you're watching their content and you're saying to yourself, oh shit, he's speaking a lot of sense. Women are really like this. Falling for the okey doke of misery that they've allowed themselves to wallow in. Let's be candid. You're a man worshiper. You look for other men permission and approval. You watch self improvement content. And instead of acting on the first thing you learned, which is probably the only thing you needed, maybe one or two YouTube videos, you watch multiple to reaffirm over and over and over again what you already know. And you're not looking for more data, more knowledge. You're looking for permission. Instead of giving yourself permission, you're giving your power away to another man. You allow this man's voice to dictate exactly what you do. And sometimes you go against your own gut instinct, and you betray yourself to listen to the opinion of another man. Not because you chose to, because it's sound, but because you didn't trust yourself enough. You didn't trust your own leadership enough to go with what you know was right. A lot of men deal with this. I think every man does. You know, all of us have a little bit of idolatry in us that we have to shrug off, every day. And the reality is that in a way it's a protective mechanism to keep us from shame, from wickedness, but in this society, in this land of confusion, it has become a way to manipulate others with deceit, with fear, with doubt, and pour into people and pour into men and keep them stuck where they're at, keep them feminine and passive. You see, the elites, the strong, they know that, what if I just start programming the algorithm and shit like that to spew out fear, to spew out hate, gender war ideologies. We're going to put these plants out there, and they're going to spew out nonsense, so that way we could shape your mind, shape your reality, right? Because whatever you think, it's true. Whatever you believe, it becomes true about you. And instead of questioning your own beliefs, instead of questioning and understanding, where did I really learn this from? Where did this really come from? You never do it. You never do it. Because you wait for the TV, for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok to tell you exactly what to think and what not to think. You are a man worshiper. You don't look for information on your own. You're too lazy to do that. You take another man's word at face value. Not to say that there's not men that don't build up their trust, that you don't have good rapport with, but you should verify everything. Everything. Scripture tells you prove and hold that which is good. Prove it. Scripture also tells you to have 1,000 counselors, but above all, to follow your mind, to follow your heart, and ask the Most High to direct all your ways in truth. That's Sirach, chapter 37, verses 11 down to verse 16. You have to trust your own mind. You have to trust your own voice, your own direction. I think advice is great. I think brotherhood is amazing. But at the end of the day, there's going to be times where you have to sit down and stand on your own, what you're seeing. And the people around you, they may think you're fucking crazy. They may think you're insane. And this is going to be the real test for you to see whether you're a man worshiper or you do what you really should be doing is just taking advice and counsel and seeing if it's actually going to better you or it's going to make you worse. We most often look for advice because we're looking for permission. We're looking for permission to do exactly what we know needs to be done. We're looking for permission to really voice out loud what we already know. A lot of times, I've done this within myself. I'm not even looking for advice. I'm looking for permission. I already know what the fuck I want to do. I just feel like I need the unlock. It's natural. It's normal. I'm not saying it's right, but it's happened. And as I've, grown into my fullness, you realize that you can't be doing that because you're going to become dependent on another man's foundation. You're going to become dependent on another man's voice, another man's direction, another man's leadership. Next thing you know, you're a replica. You're not even your own man. You don't have your own flair, your own suave. You just copy and paste. Then someone hits you with the question of who are you? You don't know who the fuck you are. Because everything you've learned is inherited. Because you really become a son of someone else. Ain't that a bitch? Not to be provocative, but we all need role models. We all need inspirations. That's fine. But the moment that we begin to defend another man and overly worship and overly praise like he's some god or like he's the Most High, you enter man worship territory. And that's even worse because if that man betrays you in some type of way or you feel like he betrays you, maybe even puts you in place for worshiping his ass, what happens? You become a hater. You become envious. Scripture tells you, who shall withstand envy? This world is very diabolical and men are very diabolical. Men are very lost. We talked about in the last video the weight of intentionality, of being intentional. When you don't have your own voice, when you don't trust your own eyes, when you don't see with your mind, because a wise man's eyes is in his mind, you will continually fall for every deception and trickery that goes your way. All the time. When you look for other men to give you permission, you'll never be able to hold the structure on your own. Like I said, brotherhood is great. Accountability is needed. You need people. But when you allow them to constantly build your structure and you never really think about it for yourself, you never really think for yourself what is the best thing for you, you are setting yourself up for that man to pull the rug underneath you, and now you don't know who you are. You see, I constantly self-audit myself to make sure that I'm not overly dependent on anything in this flesh, because it could be taken away very quickly. Very quickly. And next you know, you're walking around like a fucking zombie. Even within the different mentors that I have and I'm very grateful for, I always remember my center, the Lord, His Word, and making sure I double down on it. and making sure that I don't become a respecter of persons myself, despite all the great things they've done for me. Because that does them a disservice and that does myself a disservice. When you start to lose who you are and integrate what they've given you as your own, not adding your own flair, but rather a copycat, you do a disservice to them, you do a disservice to everyone else around you, and you do a disservice to yourself. A lot of men on this space are fucking followers, and instead of being their own leaders and helping other men out and uplifting other men, they become followers. They don't put their own ideas out there, which may be good, which may be better for the collective. They prefer to hide behind one man, one leader, so they don't have to take the responsibility of being a leader. And that is fucking horrible for the collective. If we're ever gonna build, if you ever want to build a community, every man must start with his own fucking house. And it starts with himself. We all have mentors. But if your mentor doesn't teach you how to do the thing for yourself, he's doing you a disservice. If you cannot do it the same way or even better than him, he's doing you a disservice. Why? Because then you can't think for yourself. You can't figure shit out for yourself. I get on this page and I would never want anybody to copy me. They could take stuff away from me and use it as an example, but we all have our own delivery. We all have our own style. I'd rather see another man and be inspired than say, shit, that dude took my idea. Like, hell no. like like never be a fucking fanboy, never be a fanatic, never be a man worshiper. You know, that's what happens a lot. And see, if you're someone of great esteem, a great power, you have to mitigate man worship, making sure that other men don't worship you. You have to tell them, hey, I'm just a man. Trust your own eyes, trust your own ears. Because I fuck up, I make mistakes too. Because you know what happens? Like I said, it breeds fucking resentment. If you fuck up a decision for them, even if you meant it with, you know, best in mind, they're gonna blame you. There's a lot of men like that. Oh, I followed this guy's advice on the internet and it didn't work and this happened, this happened. Now you got a fucking hater. Why? Because you allowed that shit. Hey, it is what it is. I don't believe in like blaming other people. I'm not saying other people don't have fault, but at the end of the day, we have to constantly keep ourselves audited and accountable. The day we stop examining ourselves is the day we lose sense of self, lose who we are. Suddenly start getting dragged by life instead of walking life. I dropped the 1% Man Brotherhood today. It's still in the works. There's going to be courses and all that shit. The link is down in the bio, in the description. Sorry, the link is down in the description. You guys want to join in? It's $49.99 a month. We're gonna be running community challenges. I'm gonna be sharing my journal prompts that I do there daily. Very introspective work. Very introspective work. This will be different than the one-on-one mentorship, but this is just so you guys could get familiar with me and begin to see how I move and operate. All the systems that I talk about on this channel, all the things I talk about on this channel, they all come from me living it in some type of way, form, or fashion. Embodiment. That's what I chase. Alignment with the Most High, congruency with my word, and embodiment of these things. I don't care how much fucking knowledge you have. If you do not embody it, you do not truly understand the nuances of those things, which is why, to reframe, go back to the topic of this video, you're a man worshiper. You can have all the knowledge of another man, but if you've never lived what he lived or attempted to take the path that he took and seen your own version of it, all of that advice and counsel, knowledge is in vain, and you lack the wisdom that you gain from walking that path, whatever it is. Whatever it is. So if you want to be held accountable, you want to run these challenges with me, and you want to, see how I operate. Not only that, if you want to become better, this is about becoming 1%. I already consider myself 1%. I consider myself 0.1. You know, uh, it's about having the delusion to take the chance on yourself, the leap of faith, and actually walking like that and pushing each other. I could push myself, but I'm willing to take other people to the other level so we could all eat together, build together, and really grow a community together. Especially in this world where men are isolated and alone, they want us like that. So let's go against the grain and let's go against the grain and build each other up. That's why I opened up this community as a brotherhood, not to be a lord or overseer because that's weird, but that way we could grow and build together and we could all share bread together. With that being said, peace.